Okay, everyone, welcome back to a little bit more of How to Speak Dragonese. Stoic was trying very hard not to feel disappointed in his son. He kept telling himself that Hiccup was just a slow developer and would soon start getting muscles and nose hair and scoring the winning goal in bashyball games like Stoic had himself. But what was he doing? Earning reports like, Hiccup is the worst sailor I have ever taught in my 20 years. How could he have come back from a perfectly straightforward training exercise, having misplaced both his dragon and his boat? And how could he possibly have got lost and accidentally boarded a Roman ship rather than a peaceable fishing boat? Vikings didn't get lost. Stoic opened his mouth to bellow at his son, and then he closed it again. Small, skinny, freckled and unsatisfactory, Hiccup's worried face looked at him. He was clearly desperately anxious about that laughably tiny dragon of his. Stoic didn't have the heart to be angry. He crumpled up the report in one gigantic fist. Now we have here the Burke Pirate Training Programme report card. So here is Hiccup's report card. The motto is, he who hits hardest lives longest. It's not very good, is it? Name of child, Hiccup HH the Third. Subject, teacher's report and mark out of 10. Beginner burping. Hiccup cannot get up the necessary wind to do well in this subject. 0 out of 10. Frightening foreigners. Must stop speaking in impeccable French and work on his yelling. 1 out of 10. Advanced ruddery. Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. -4 out of 10. Hammer throwing studies. Might improve when he can actually pick up the hammer. 0 out of 10. Sword fighting lessons. Quick reflexes and strong fancy footwork. I'm impressed. Needs to work on his aggression. 9 out of 10. Shipbuilding. I have grave doubts that the hopeful Puffin will even float. 0 out of 10. Boarding an enemy ship. Hiccup is the worst sailor I have ever taught in 20 years. Ha 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 out of 10. Bashyball. Spends most of his time in the mud being sat on. 1 out of 10. Son, he said gently and gravely, I am sorry you have lost Ruthless. Toothless, Hiccup interrupted indignantly. He's called Toothless. Toothless, Stoic corrected himself hurriedly, but I'm about to tell you something very important. Stoic took Hiccup with the shoulders and looked him in the eye. You, he said solemnly, are the son of a chief. You have lost your pet, but you must be brave. You must be a man today. There will be other dragons. Not like Toothless, objected Hiccup in distress. That dragon trusted me, and I let him down. Silence, said Stoic sternly. What does a chief feel, son? A chief feels no pain, replied Hiccup obediently. But father, Stoic was just getting into his stride. A chief feels no pain. A chief feels no fear. A chief must be above mere weak personal feelings. There is no question of putting together a war party to rescue your dragon. It would be a waste of our warriors' time. The Romans are probably halfway back to Rome by now, and I have turned useless into a handbag. Toothless, corrected Hiccup again, and that's what I'm telling you, father. I overheard them talking, and I think they're not just passing through. Talking? Roared Stoic, his eyebrows lowering. What do you mean, talking? How did you understand these Romans? Admitted Hiccup. Old Wrinkly's been teaching me some Latin, you see. Latin? Latin? Stoic exploded. He crashed his fists so hard on the table that the oysters they'd been tucking into did a couple of cartwheels in the air. My son has been speaking Latin? He controlled himself with an effort. Hooligans do not, I repeat, do not speak Latin. What are they teaching you in frightening foreigners' lessons? When a hooligan meets a foreigner, he shouts at it loudly and slowly. That's the only language a foreigner understands. Hooligans don't talk to dragons either, or write books about them. You're spending far too much time scribbling about dragons and not enough time to preparing to become a chief. Stoic took the half of the How to Speak Dragonese out of Hiccup's hands and threw it to the fire. Hiccup gasped. That book had everything he had ever learned about dragons in it. How would he ever talk to dragons again without it? Stoic stomped off. As soon as he was out of sight, Hiccup burned his fingers pulling the book out of the flames. Luckily it was still quite damp, and the edges were only very slightly burnt. That night, for the first time in a long, long while, Hiccup had to go to bed without the company of Toothless. The little dragon was a small, wriggling, snoring, hot water bottle. Now Hiccup lay awake till the early hours of the morning, shivering uncontrollably under the thin covers, his feet and his hands as cold as the North Pole, his ears trembling in the icy draught. And when eventually he slipped in and out of a feverish sleep, the night dragons and the wind and the wolves seemed to be howling all together. "You've lost Toothless, lost him forever. Lost Toothless, lost him forever and ever and ever," over and over and over again. Now, I'm sorry that was a very short one. We're moving on to chapter 6 in our next bit of reading. Thank you very, very much for joining me again, girls and boys, and I hope you are enjoying our book.